Hello everyone and welcome to Tarnished Bronze. Patrick, today what do we have on the agenda?
The Ambush Bug four-part miniseries by the estimable Keith Giffen uh, started in the summer of 1985.
And
At your request, I would like to add
okay,
too.
so like I said, this one might be all my fault. Um Now we have done some Keith Giffen before, so we're not going to get too much into the weeds about where we first discovered Keith Giffen, but this is coming out in between his much heralded Darkness saga for the Legion of Superheroes, but before we get into Justice League International. So this could be sort of seen as a proto Bwahaha era Justice League. So Keith Giffen is trying to insert some humor into comics again. And we're going to get four issues of this, and they're kind of extended length issues. They might be 25, 26 page stories, Patrick. So got to say the cover isn't the greatest. Some of the other
No,
covers in this are better, and it just maybe not for me.
yeah, I agree with that. The old lady picture frame oval is is a trope, is a choice. Um, I This is starting to get into that Keith Giffen style that I don't always love. So with the oversized slouch boots and y- the kind
We
of
know that you like the pirate boots, but you don't like slovenly boots. Is that the
yeah,
yeah, too
I think the
too
girls
loose?
call these slouch boots, like when
Okay.
they don't have the nice pirate cuff. They just kind of slouch on your foot there. So, but
So
then we immediately get the Giffen tech, which obviously I always love. So.
it does look good. To be fair, this is like years before Animal Man and Deadpool will make breaking the fourth wall kind of like a highfalutin thing. Here, Giffen uses it to lowfalutin effect. And Patrick, were you ever a Trekkie?
My dad really liked the first series, so we watched those on reruns when I was a real little kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm more of a Star Wars guy.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Comments
So
below if you want to
yeah.
go.
So you heard it here. Patrick's not the biggest fan of Ambush Bug, is a Star Warsist over a Star Trekist, whereas I'm more into Doctor Who and Babylon 5. So,
Wait till you hear me talk about Taylor Swift. We're gonna.
okay. All right. So
Kidding,
between
I'm
us,
kidding, I'm kidding.
we're ready for all of the hate. So please hit the like button down there. Like I said, I really like this tech, but the rest of this is so dense, Patrick. And are we getting into the sort of troll face era, 5 or 6 years too early? Just look at how much panel there is going on. So, like I said, this is going to be four issues. There's a hell of a lot of stuff going on. Individually, all of these panels are great, but it just seems a bit intense for the material. It's kind of a halfway house between like some sort of noirish saga and a halfway house between a comic strip that is meant to have jokes. And I don't think it always quite lands, even though just looking at these panels, I do find them really fun. And just to be
And the
fair, he's
king of
not
the
on.
nine panel, and
He's
then this is even 10. He's outdoing himself.
Yeah. This is before he's codified that approach. And like I said, there's a few things he will use later, like the faces in the shadows and stuff. That's something that will crop up in a more palatable art style in a few years' time. But here he's kind of, I think he's getting to grips with a different type of thing that he wants to
This
do,
is like a
Patrick.
much cleaned up version of 10 years later, a little bit. In terms of the with the shadows on the face and the
Yeah, yeah.
it's it
I'm
looks like a
pleased
less
this
rushed version to me
I'm
a little bit.
pleased this artifact exists. I don't know if we would get it made today, especially as a standalone issue one, as opposed to just we're going to try it out and do a couple of these specials, kind of like the Marvel Zombie specials or the Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe specials. Or a Lobo special. I mean, considering the popularity of Lobo compared to the popularity of Ambush Bug, but Ambush Bug gets the this ongoing sort of saga. It's pretty strange. Now, do
Well,
any of
let
these,
let
sorry,
me ask you this. No, that's okay. Let me ask you this because I think in my notes, when I reviewed my notes, that I had mentioned there was an ad for the Ambush Bug special with the Legion of Substitute Heroes and Superman, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
so this predates that.
yes.
My question is, uh, where my first uh, introduction to Ambush Bug was that special because
Okay.
I like the substitute heroes. So that's where I knew Ambush Bug from. I just now realizing that this is slightly before that. So is this our introduction to Ambush Bug, or was he already an established character? I don't know.
He's a guest star in a few of these Superman or Action Comics issues. So there are a few, but he's always the guest star. This may be the first one that he gets his own sort of saga in, and maybe in the DC Comics Presents or that series, there might have been an issue that just had him. But to date, Ambush Bug is a support character in either Action Comics or Superman.
Mm,
But
okay, that makes sense.
this one though is going the full comedy Monty with this amazing that last panel is absolute dynamite. And so I can see here the genesis of what will become Justice League International, the Bwahaha era, known for that one punch, I think in the first few issues, Bruce Wayne knocking out Guy Gardner. So what I'm sort of seeing here is Keith Giffen is getting all of his sort of ducks in a row, but he doesn't quite yet have the ability to translate what he wants on the page just quite yet. And also he's got to kind of sell this character Ambush Bug. So we need the annoying thing of a plot. Whereas if you already know who the characters are, you can do character bits. Whereas this sort of is struggling because we need to, why do we even care about this character? Well, we have to have this sort of trial happen to him. So something has happened to his sidekick, but nonetheless, we get some great setup for these one-off sort of comedic gag bits, would you say, Patrick? But it just seems that the bits can't sustain for four issues of this stuff. So
Yeah, I feel like the first one it starts out maybe a little strong, and we get that sort of signature Giffen snark, and he
yeah,
really takes it out on everybody. Gets their turn in the barrel. The soft-hearted liberals, the justice system. He takes the
he
piss out of the Republicans.
one of my favorite phrases is mentioned here. He calls someone a commie coddler. So you've got to remember this is kind of like the last dying embers of the Cold War are still in the future here. So 1984, death from above is still going to happen. But he calls this character a commie coddler, which is like such a great phrase, Patrick.
Yeah, we've
That's
got the Do Nothing Congress. He takes it out on comic book speculators in
oh,
1984, 1980, what did I say, 1985?
yeah, yeah,
1985, comic speculation wasn't even a thing. It was only a gleam in the tech bros' eyes
yeah, yeah.
while they were still in the crib, and the comic book industry itself. So, I mean, he's really spreading it around. And also, just even though it doesn't really matter, it's incidental, but the plot is actually radical Republican group want to blow up a warehouse full of nerve gas, but they end up blowing up the wrong warehouse. So just the ineptitude, and this is definitely sort of a submersive jab, in my opinion, of the Reagan administration, and Keith Giffen is just like giving, and he's no soft-hearted liberal because, like I said, he gives them the business too. So he's definitely just sort of an iconoclast, and he's really letting everybody have it with both barrels. And like you said, it doesn't always translate, but there are certain moments and certain jokes that hit, especially if you have to kind of be able to plug into the history of the time, I think, to make it make sense because it's very of its time.
Yeah, so that was my last little question about this issue. Did this date well, or did this date poorly, or is it being dated totally unrelated to the content of the art and more related to the content of the commentary that he is providing?
Yeah, I think if you read it closely enough, even if you don't have a history from that time, you can still get what he's getting at. Um, I don't know that all of it translates to present time necessarily. Um, but like I said, but you can understand the jokes and kind of get most of it, even if maybe you weren't alive at the time. But I think it is better and more informed if you can kind of read it from an 80s point of view.
Okay. And speaking of the 80s, there's an ad in the back here for the best comics of 1984 from Amazing Hero. So I'm going to go down the list, Patrick, and you're going to say whether you've read it or not. So the Alan Moore Swamp Thing.
Yeah, no,
No. John Sable.
never even heard of it.
Very,
I've seen it
very,
in these lists.
very, very good. American Flag by Howard Chaykin.
No.
So Teen Titans.
Yes.
Okay, so Patrick, you've read one of the top 10 comics of 1984. Fantastic Four. Is this still the Byrne era?
Yes.
Okay, so the X-Men. We've done some on the show, so we've
100%.
now this is not Blue Beetle. This is Blue Devil. I
He had
think
his
it's
own series.
a DC character, right?
Yeah.
Now, it has to be good if it's like in and around where American Flag and Teen Titans and the X-Men are. So, I mean, maybe that's just me being optimistic, but at least I found something that I haven't heard of that I might want to read if it's in there with these luminaries.
I
Have you
have a
read it,
couple
Patrick?
of issues, and I wasn't into Blue Devil, but so yeah, I'm
Okay.
surprised.
All right.
To
Doesn't
say, I
doesn't mean
recently read just this week one of just a random Teen Titans from this time with
okay.
Wolfman. The art was beautiful, but I actually thought it read kind of dated a little bit. I don't know. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I was gonna, to be honest. I have to be
Okay, so
100%
we're going to
honest.
have to do a little bit of a medium dive into some Teen Titans, Patrick, and see if that's just the impression that you get from the first 24 issues, which I know are very cemented in time and place, as opposed to the action-packed ones that are, say, 50 onwards, which are more character-driven.
Mhm.
With the who's Donna Troy and the Dick Grayson love triangles or love
And I will
quadruples
say I
or
have some trade paperbacks
pentagrams.
that I've really enjoyed
Okay.
of them, and also I have some single issues that create story arcs with can't remember the villain team that Simon, the guy with the transparent head, led.
Oh,
Maybe the Fearsome Five or the Frightful Five, probably Fearsome Five, something like
okay.
that. That's sort of character study of Cyborg and his inability to kind of accept his mechanical life and that kind of thing. So, and I really enjoyed those, but just the one off, I was like, oh, this isn't hitting the way I remembered. But anyway, that's a side note.
So,
I'm
and then
also
we,
surprised Power Pack is on here. Like,
yeah, I
I don't know.
haven't read a Power Pack, and I'm not sure if that's really, if I'm gonna put it in the top 10 comics of 1984. Atari Force, I think I have an issue of that. I think it has some pretty heavy hitters, at least in that original arc, but it is what it says on the tin. It's like a superhero team arranged around the Atari video game system. So, in many ways, so dumb and in many ways so beautiful. But I can't believe that obviously some people with some good craft must have done something on it. And who's doing Doctor Strange right now?
That I have no idea because I don't think I have a single issue of Doctor Strange.
Okay, and so that's so we've got some thoughts about what we want to do. I know that Swamp Thing is probably too famous to really be kind of underground, but maybe we'll get into some of these weird Teen Titans issues. Obviously, we'll cover some more Fantastic Four and X-Men Bronze Age stuff on the channel, but maybe
I'm
we'll get
also
into these John Sable and American Flag issues. I
I'm
know I have
interested in
American
how
Flag.
these were chosen. Is this just number of sales? Because this is per R.A. Jones. Who's R.A. Jones and why does his opinion matter?
I'm not sure why their opinion matters, but I do think that this is a vote. a thing that is voted on, not a thing that
Okay.
is chosen. So, and I do know that at least three of these aren't published by like the or at least two of them, if not Vertigo doesn't exist yet. But John Sable and American Flag, I think, are on independent distribution and comic companies. So First Comics and maybe Pacific. So it's amazing that they're even on this list. It's inconceivable that in a world where there's the Avengers and the Hulk and Spider-Man and so on. So I just thought I'd bring that up, Patrick, because that sort of shocked me because I have a deep love of American Flag, and I was like, wow, to get on a list with things that is otherwise just disposable entertainment, and this is very edgy because it predates Dark Knight Returns and those kind of like that era of comics. I'm shocked by it. Anyway, we digressed a little bit, and I can't call myself a dinky die Australian without having Ambush Bug issue 2 with this kind of like wonky koala there, but nonetheless, we're gonna get into it. And what's the gag here, Patrick? Right on
So,
the right on the
I,
cover.
this is we also did Invasion, which was also Keith Giffen, which also heavily featured Australia. And, I mentioned in that episode that there was this very obvious American obsession with all things Australian in the mid 80s. And it predates Crocodile Dundee, was more of a
Yeah.
product of that rather than an impetus, in my opinion. And as people, longtime listeners that I'm sure there are so many know, that I have family from Australia as well, so that was always sort of a claim to fame. But yeah, I wonder. It made me wonder. Was Keith Giffen married to an Australian? Does he have family roots there? Like, it seems to be. It seems to come up multiple times. So I don't know. But this is actually Quentin Quantis, who is a cuteness researcher, and I guess he's doing research in koala bears, and he turns himself into a giant golf playing koala bear. Um,
for
and there
for
you have it.
reasons that still escape me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, we're almost at blah ha ha, but we haven't quite codified that yet because we're just bah ha 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 here. So we're almost there. We're seeing something form in front of our eyes that isn't quite whole yet. And so here we have the Bug Enterprises, more of these really dense panels, more of these one panel gags that if you blink, you'll miss them.
Mhm.
It is quite a rich world that he manages to conjure here. It's just the fact that it's stretched a bit thin. And in this particular issue, I think the claustrophobic panels are very effective, but the asides are leaving me a little bit dry, Patrick. So when he gets into the story like this, I'm quite comfortable. I'm getting into it. It's these dry little asides that are taking me out of the story. And this is something that great cartooning, just peculiar choices here. So we have Bjorn Borg, who's by the way is Swedish and not German, right? As you know, so he's not from Bonn, Germany, and like the gag doesn't work on because he's sort of stuffed it with I know why he wants to call it Germany, but it just seems like a big misfire here. I do like the Rod Sterling. That does look pretty true to life as far as that Twilight Zone guy who would introduce the episodes. Patrick, are you familiar with this, or are
Mm.
you
Love
just
Twilight Zone. That was
yeah?
another one of my dad's favorites.
Okay,
So,
yeah. So I was wondering if you picked up on this. What was the point of this?
I wonder if it's it's a playoff on maybe the old time Legion uh,
Okay.
stuff. I don't know if that's a seriously deep callback, but in the 60s, the readers would often write in letters and maybe do new costume designs for some of the
Oh, And you vote for the leader and stuff, right? The
Yeah, well, they
election.
would do that too, but also
Okay.
some of the, at least a couple of the costumes that were actually adopted by DC and whoever was writing Legion at the time were actually submitted by fans.
Okay.
And of course, we've talked before that some of those fans ended up growing up and becoming writers for the series.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
it's a very incestuous thing that's going on on Legion. So I wonder if, he's obviously working on Legion at this time. So I wonder if maybe it's a callback to that.
Yeah, and so any big sort of personal claims to fame in this issue, Patrick, or
I love the forehand volley grip
okay.
on the previous page.
Good
I
technique,
really
good
like,
knee bend.
yes, I really love the cigarette brand is RIP.
I think I have, yeah, there we go. That's our big
If you're
koala. They're
going to
called
do
Rip.
it, do it
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's awesome. And my question for you was, do koalas really say knick-knack?
No,
Well, I've been to Australia, but I didn't get to hold a koala. If slash when I ever go back, I'm 100. I went to an animal sanctuary, so we saw all the
okay.
special Australian animals, but I didn't go
Yeah.
to one where you could like hold them and stuff. So
Yeah, well that
I'm not worried about getting chlamydia. I will
okay.
100% wear protection, but
Yeah, so no, I don't think they nick knack around. Maybe that is lost in the mists of pop culture, Patrick. Some of this stuff, but I'm just starting to feel that we're maybe flogging a bit of a dead horse, no matter how good some of those little koala pinups are as we go through the issues. And the big sell here is this is Keith Giffen doing Dark Side for the first time since the Great Darkness saga. So I think we're just going to keep that pretty buried. Issue three, I love this. This I can understand being if you're a DC fan, it's hard to keep all of these DC multiverses straight. And we are going to do a deep dive in DC continuity in issue three. Great gag.
well,
Uh,
this is around the time of crisis,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's very of the time, and it's making me feel now that the one running theme through this is that it's a little bit of an inside joke for the people who read a lot of different DC comics.
Yeah. And so there's both numbers, letters, Greek alphabet. I see a
A
pi. I see
pie,
a
I
love
love that.
heart. Like there's a lot of, yeah, there's just too many Earths going on. I know that the main Marvel universe is called Earth 616. I don't see 616 there. Does DC have Earth Prime and Earth 2? Earth Prime is something weird, but is it Earth 2? What Earth are we on in DC at this time?
One, well, I don't know. Ambush Bug is maybe on
Okay.
his own Earth, but at this time in DC, it's Earth One is our regular Justice League. Earth Two is the JSA.
Okay.
I think,
Oh, that's the split. Okay.
yeah, I don't even think. I feel like I think Earth Prime was probably already around. I feel like there was an Earth where it was just Superboy, and then they repurposed that Earth when they had to get rid of Superboy and all that
So,
stuff.
so cranky Superboy who starts Infinite Crisis or probably Infinite Crisis, the one who pounds on the thing and is really angry, that's Superboy Prime, and doesn't exist yet because he
I
is
think I
he's
think he
created
might.
in
He's
the
not the evil one. I don't think he's evil, but I do think a Superboy from Earth Prime does exist because there's a DC Comics presents where Superman and Superboy are the two. Those are always Superman and guest star, and the guest
okay.
star was Superboy because I have that comic. So, and I think it predates this. It's before 1985, so I do think the Earth where there was just the Superboy did exist. I
So
think.
that is great that we have your Talmudic like knowledge just on tap, Patrick. So actually issue three has some fantastic pastiches. So we get Keith Giffen doing an Archie pastiche. Now I could have done this all in a one issue special. It drags on for a lot, even though this is absolutely amazing. Like uh I mean it just shocks me. This isn't the only pastiche that he'll do. in this issue. So on the top left, we have the 2000 AD riff. Now, I'm not sure if this is Kevin O'Neill from League of Extraordinary Gentlemen fame or Mick McMahon, who did a lot of the Judge Dredd stuff, but like that to me reads exactly what it's meant to be. The deadline style, where all of the line weights are similar on that right hand side, is absolutely fantastic. And I'm not sure if that's meant to be Pratt or one of these. I'm going to mangle the pronunciation, the Desnai people or BD, the graphic novels that are in Europe. So that's the sort of style that they do. Think Tintin. The bottom left seems like Astro Boy, like it's the sort of early manga riff that has been outdated already by 1985, but it reads like it's meant to, like Astro Boy, Tatsuo, all those sort of people. And then I think the Filipino one is Ernie Chan, who does a lot of stuff. So I mean, just gone really, really does it well. And then maybe if we ever get to some of the ambush bug specials, we'll see some more of these pastiches. Now, I don't know why they just didn't do this all in one thing, and you don't need a plot for this. You can just do your riffs, Patrick. And this might actually be so this is something that we will become very familiar with on the channel, the nine
Mm.
panels, right? And you see it here the first time. I don't like how all the panels are buttressed up. I like them separate. This issue predates Watchmen, which will obviously use the nine panels to great effect. The Watchmen difference, though, is we don't always have the perfect nine. We sometimes within the shapes will blur to two or three of the panels. But Patrick, this is like, is the joke wearing a bit thin for you?
Yeah, for sure. And but I did love the fact that it looks like a blue abomination.
Okay, yeah,
I always
yeah,
did really love the Abomination. Obviously, Marvel character, not a DC character,
yeah,
but to me, that's the first thing I thought of. I know he's a very nice color. I mean, that is blue, right? I'm
yeah,
colorblind. So
yeah, yeah. So
could
this
have
is
been could have been
definitely a bit
purple.
a bit scattershot, but I can appreciate the little bits in there, but it's probably not enough to make me want to keep reading. Would you say that, Patrick? We should have wrapped it up here. Although the fourth issue I do like, and we'll get into it in a sec, but I think it's
Yeah, I
a
think
bit much.
this one I loved. I loved the play on the art. I thought that was great. The various artistic styles. But you're exactly right. I think the shtick is wearing a little thin by now. But there were cute moments. I think the difference is there are cute visual moments in
Yeah,
three that kind of keep you interested in the issue. Maybe fewer verbal gags. Whereas with the first one, I think there were more sort of
a
like
good
snarky comments and
good
inside
balance. Yeah,
jokes. Yeah.
yeah.
And so, yeah, maybe if they could have combined them all into one special, I totally agree. It does drag a little bit. I think there was Hembeck in there. I have in my notes that there was a tribute to Fred Hembeck, but I didn't. Oh, you might have not.
Yeah,
Um,
in the interests of space and time, the Hembeck one is almost too much to me like the Archie page, so that's why I didn't showcase it
fair
here.
enough.
But he does, and the Hembeck comics are maybe hit and miss, but the Hembeck covers are always really great. Uh,
I actually thought it was appropriate for him to do Hembeck too, because like Hembeck, a little ambush bug goes a long way.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like Hembeck, I think the jokes sometimes can get thin and they can be a little hit or miss. I do like Hembeck, but I recently bought, like a compendium of his work, and it was fun. But reading it all in one go was I was like, okay, yeah, I got my fill. I'm ready to move on to something else. So, with all due respect.
um, great page, great visual gag, great editorial. This is everything comics for boys is meant to be, Patrick, right? Like just we've got you know, sex gags, we've got everything that you would ever want in a comic. It just so happens that it's in issue 4 of a saga rather than just in a really nice tight two or three or just maybe two issues. I kind of really enjoyed some of the creative choices here. Like this is another amazingly dense first few pages where we basically get the plot out of the way pretty quick. There's some crazy fella from a different dimension who's popped into our comic book and he's having a real go at ambush bug, and he does have your pirate boots, so he's a little bit like the sort of Deathstroke guy. And then he just exits the panel, which is kind of really visually well done there at the end. And we've got all of these what will become Keith Giffen signatures, like the faces in the shadows, which mean that the teeth really come out. Um,
The empty
these
eyes.
these crazy close-ins and so on. So there's a lot in this. It's just like, oh, we had to kind of survive a lot of stuff. But that's not all. Then we have this laundry saga, and I do like to be perfectly fair, when we have these dense panels, there's always an establishing shot, and there are interesting people in the background. So they're all the world reads as real, even though we've got in the fourth panel this crazy close up of one person. It's kind of like, oh, I could see someone like the person with the punk haircut there and the rather rotund figure in the background living in the real world.
Hmm.
Um, Albeit probably not with someone who is head to toe in bandages, Patrick. Like that's a bit strange. But we have this sort of laundry saga. I'm absolutely blanking on what
It
happened in
was
this issue because it's all
Yeah, it's
the plot
the
is
origin
secondary.
of Argyle the sock.
Okay.
That was a cute gag. Yeah, my notes I said that I felt like issue four was actually particularly weak, even by the rather low bar that had been set for the series. It did seem like they had kind of run out of steam, but maybe they had a fourth book that they had to finish because the story jumps around so much that you really could have stopped it anywhere, but it really did feel like four was sort of, oh, we have to do one more. They had a gag where the artist's mother did a page, and I found that one even more irritating than a lot of the other gags that I didn't really love. I actually, on my part, I tried to be really positive when I reviewed this and try to focus on the things that I did like, but overall, it felt like it was a little bit of a little bit of a drag, especially four.
Yeah, so this won't be the last Keith Giffen that we do. He will do extended runs on a variety of comics, Patrick, but I think his humor stuff is best in a short dose. And we might get into some of the specials down the track a little bit, but I like that we live in a world where this exists. And I think it was just a little bit of a misfire. Like the highs are really high. Like there's some great stuff in there, but it's just diluted out with this sort of forcing it into four issues. And I don't really want to sort of dwell on this any longer, Patrick, but like I think this is a series of ups and downs. But if you're at all interested in Keith Giffen, it is worth just picking up just to see some in jokes and some fun cartooning. But you can find it for 50 cents in stuff around.
And the
It's around.
development of his style, right? And it is indicative of not only his drawing style but his writing style. I mean, all of it together. It kind of informs you if he's one of your go-to artists. I think you definitely can get something out of it, artists and writers.
Yeah.
Um, two One thing, did you notice the jab in the fourth issue about comic book artists who want their original art? Which
Yeah, I
I thought
find that
was
a bit.
funny coming from him, and it didn't seem like a subversive. I agree with this. It seemed like a taking the piss again. And I wrote in my notes, I'm sure that by the time he retired, he had his own um, arguments and disagreements with the comic book industry. So I was a little bit surprised by that.
Yeah, I think Keith Giffen is probably on pretty good working terms with everyone, especially DC. I might have been, I don't know this, but in the era of 52, he did that weekly series. He was the layout guy. So he was involved sort of para editorially with DC for the longest time. Although he did also do some of his own image work. He also worked for Eric Larson on a JLI ripoff. Well, it's a great series, but it's called Freak Force. So the Savage Dragon world, he does a Justice League in that. So he worked for a lot of people. Didn't seem to have any enemies. And worked from basically like the late 70s through to the 20 teens. So he must have been doing something right or be so good that they let him get away with his little asides, Patrick. Like,
Well, that one seemed like being a company man, right? And sort of not being an artist's artist.
oh, the
That's
John
my
Byrne,
interpretation.
yeah. Hog in the
So
machine. Yeah.
yeah, so maybe he was the on part of the admin business side, which I'm like, how can you, does that mean you're going against Kirby? Right? Like blasphemy. How can you do that, you know? So speaking of, side note, I think we had barely touched on this earlier, but speaking of artists and their work, and we, I've recently read one-off Action Comics
Mhm.
that I found in a 50-cent bin that was basically an homage to Superman creators, where we they set up this alternate Earth.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's 551. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. I think it was. It could have been 554. And it's a relatively famous issue. Once I started reading it, I was like, have I read this before? And I think I've read a blog post by someone online about it before, where Superman doesn't exist on this world, so he has to be created by two kids. And of course, they're patterned after Superman's creators. And at this time, I'm sure that they were probably in ongoing litigation with DC. So, you know, just seeing the creators and, you know, editorial obviously allowed this, but seeing them sort of pay homage to their fellow artists who maybe didn't feel like they were getting their due, at least at different times, if not in 1983 or whenever that comic book
Yeah,
came out.
definitely not in 1983. And then I think it took Bill Finger till like 2016 or 17 to get credit for creating the Joker, by the way. Like if you've ever seen a movie in the last 30 years,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
um or turned on a cartoon, just
Yeah.
astonishing stuff, Patrick. So yeah, maybe that's something that we'll delve into. That seems like something that might need to be dusted off for the channel, Patrick.
It was a good comic. It was the plot was a little thin, but it was like I said, it was more the idea behind it. Also, full disclosure, it was Gil Kane, and I don't really love that art. So
This is a great spot to end it. You can save your hate for the comments, like, follow, and subscribe, and just keep those emails coming about how many more Gil Kane issues you want us to do. So that is goodbye from
all hate below.
Patrick and I. We will see you on the next episode shortly.